In a small, peaceful village by the sea lived Leto, a humble fisherman. His house was simple, built with wooden beams and covered in seaweed that was always wet from the salty air. Each morning, Leto would rise before the sun and head to the beach with his fishing nets. He loved the sound of the waves and the feeling of the cool breeze on his face. The fish he caught that day would be brought back to his small home to be shared with his wife, Nara. Leto's wife, Nara, was a kind-hearted woman. Her eyes sparkled with a warmth that made everyone feel at ease. She had long black hair that flowed smoothly over her shoulders, and her soft hands worked magic in the kitchen. Nara loved to bake bread and cook meals with the fish Leto brought home. But it wasn't just her cooking that made Nara special. It was her wisdom. People in the village often came to her for advice, and she always had something wise to say. Leto adored Nara. She was everything to him, and he believed that their life together, though simple, was full of happiness. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough for Leto. But there was one thing that bothered Leto from time to time. His best friend, Amir, who was a baker in the village, always seemed a little too interested in Nara. Amir was clever, quick-witted, and liked to show off his intelligence. He often spent hours talking to Nara, and though Leto never said anything, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy whenever the two of them laughed together. Amir was a tall, lean man with a quick smile and an even quicker tongue. He owned a bakery in the village, and his bread was known far and wide for its softness and flavor. But Amir wasn't content just baking bread. He was proud of his intelligence, and he often liked to compare himself to others. He looked at Leto with his simple ways and wondered how someone as wise and thoughtful as Nara could be with someone like him. Amir had a quiet envy growing inside him. He admired Nara, not only for her beauty, but for her wisdom. She was everything he thought a woman should be: clever, caring, and graceful. And yet, she had chosen Leto. In Amir's mind, this didn't make sense. He believed that Nara could do better. He convinced himself that she would appreciate someone more like him, someone who was quick with words and knew how to make people think. One day, Amir's thoughts took a darker turn. He found himself walking to Leto's house, determined to share his ideas. He had thought it over carefully, and though it wasn't easy to say, he believed it was for the best. When Leto opened the door, Amir greeted him with a smile, though it was laced with an undercurrent of something more complicated. "Leto," Amir began, "I've been thinking about something. What if we traded roles? What if you married my friend Sumi, and I took Nara as my wife?" Amir said it lightly, almost as if it was a joke. But there was something in his voice that made Leto stop and think. Leto's face went pale. "What do you mean, Amir?" he asked, confused. I mean exactly that, Amir said, trying to sound casual. You and I could switch lives for a while. You could have Sumi, and I could have Nara. Think about it. She deserves someone like me, someone who understands her mind. You're a good man, but you're not. Well, you're not as clever as I am. Leto stood in silence for a moment, shocked by his friend's words. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Was he not enough for Nara? Did she really deserve someone smarter, more talented? For the first time, Leto began to wonder if Amir was right. Later that evening, after the sun had set and the stars filled the sky, Leto sat with Nara. He looked at her, his heart heavy with doubt. He loved her deeply, but now he wasn't sure if she loved him the same way. Nara, he said quietly. Amir said something today. He thinks that maybe you deserve someone more clever than me. Nara looked at him, her eyes calm and understanding. She reached out and took his hand in hers. Leto, she said softly, you are everything I need. Your heart is kind, and your spirit is strong. What more could I want? But Amir thinks I'm not enough, Leto said. He says you could do better. I'm just a fisherman, Nara. I'm not clever like he is. Nara smiled gently. Leto, you don't need to be clever to be a good man. I don't need someone with fancy words or complicated thoughts. I need someone who loves me, who is there for me when I need them. You are that person. Leto felt a wave of relief wash over him. Nara's words, so simple and full of love, gave him the strength to believe in himself again. But he also wanted to show Amir that there was more to life than just being clever. I have an idea, Leto said. Let's hold a community event, a cooking competition. You and I will prepare a meal, and Amir and his friend Sumi will prepare one too. Let's see who the villagers prefer. Nara's eyes sparkled with amusement. That sounds like a fun idea, Leto. But remember, this isn't about proving anything to Amir. It's about showing everyone what we do best together. Leto nodded, grateful for Nara's support. They would show the village that there was more to life than intelligence. There was also love, simplicity, and the joy of sharing a meal with others. As the days passed, Leto and Nara began to plan the community cooking event. Word quickly spread throughout the village, and excitement began to build. The villagers were eager to see what the two couples would cook up. Nara, with her gentle nature, was well loved by everyone in the village, and many had tasted her delicious bread and meals before. She knew the villagers would enjoy her cooking, but this wasn't just about the food. It was about proving to Amir that being clever wasn't the only thing that mattered in life. There was also kindness, loyalty, and simplicity. Leto felt nervous but determined. He loved his wife more than anything and wanted to show Amir and the villagers that a simple life filled with love was just as important as intelligence and cleverness. One morning, Leto went to the village square to announce the event. He stood in front of a crowd, his usual shyness making him stammer a bit as he spoke. Hello, everyone, Leto said, his voice carrying through the air. Nara and I are going to hold a community cooking event, and Amir and his friend Sumi are going to join us. We'll be preparing meals, and you all can come and taste them. We'll see which one you like best. The villagers cheered and clapped, excited about the idea. They trusted Leto and Nara's cooking, but they were curious to see what Amir, known for his cleverness, would bring to the table. When Amir heard the news, he was pleased. He saw this event as his chance to prove that he could do more than bake bread. He could cook, and he could impress everyone with his skill. He spent days planning his menu, preparing for the big day. He felt a strong desire to show Nara and everyone that he was the better choice for her. The day of the cooking event arrived, and the village square was filled with excitement. Tables were set up, and colorful cloths draped over them. The air was filled with the smells of fresh bread, sizzling fish, and cooked vegetables. Leto and Nara arrived early, carrying their ingredients in baskets. Nara wore a simple dress, her hair tied back in a neat bun. She looked radiant as she set up their cooking station, smiling and greeting the villagers who had gathered to watch. Leto, ever the quiet man, stood beside her, setting up his fish and vegetables. Amir arrived with Sumi, carrying a basket of his own ingredients. He had a confident smile on his face, clearly excited for the competition. He glanced at Nara briefly, his gaze lingering a little too long for Leto's comfort. But he quickly turned his attention back to the task at hand. "Good luck," Amir said, his tone polite, but his eyes sharp. Leto nodded, not wanting to get drawn into any conflict. He was here for the villagers, to show them that love and simplicity mattered just as much as skill and wit. The villagers gathered around, eagerly waiting for the meals to be prepared. Children ran around, their laughter filling the air, while the adults chatted excitedly. As the event began, Nara and Leto worked smoothly together. Nara's hands moved quickly and expertly as she prepared the bread dough, while Leto carefully cleaned the fish, making sure every detail was perfect. They worked in harmony, their actions a quiet testament to the love they shared. "We'll make this feast special," Nara said, her voice calm and steady. Leto smiled, watching her as she worked. "I know we will," he replied. "It's not just about the food, though. It's about showing the village what matters most, what we have together." Meanwhile, Amir and Sumi were struggling to match the energy of Leto and Nara. Amir's confidence was starting to fade as he worked. He had never cooked a full meal before. He was used to baking bread and pastries, but this was a whole new challenge. He chopped vegetables too quickly, causing them to scatter. His hands shook a little as he tried to season his fish stew, but it didn't taste quite right. Sumi, who was kind and easygoing, noticed Amir's stress. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, trying to help. "I'm fine," Amir said quickly, though his voice was tense. "I just need to focus." As the afternoon went on, Leto and Nara's dishes were coming together beautifully. The bread was baking to perfection, and the fish was sizzling on the grill. Nara had prepared a simple but delicious vegetable stew that complemented the fish perfectly. The smell was mouth-watering, and the villagers couldn't wait to try it. Amir, on the other hand, was having a harder time. The fish stew he had prepared was undercooked, and his bread was burnt at the edges. He couldn't hide his frustration, but he kept trying to salvage what he could. He wanted to impress everyone, but his skills were not enough. Finally, the moment arrived for the villagers to taste the meals. Everyone gathered around the tables, eagerly eyeing the dishes. First, they tasted the food prepared by Leto and Nara. The bread was soft and fluffy, and the fish was perfectly cooked, tender and flavorful. The vegetables, seasoned with herbs, were fresh and delicious. The villagers murmured in delight, enjoying every bite. Leto and Nara smiled at each other, their hearts full as they watched the joy their meal brought to the community. Next, the villagers tried Amir and Sumi's food. The fish stew, unfortunately, was still undercooked, and the bread had a burnt taste. The villagers tried their best to be polite, but it was clear that the meal was not up to the standard of Leto and Nara's. A few of the villagers laughed softly, not in a cruel way, but more out of surprise at how different the meals turned out. One of the older women spoke up with a chuckle. "I think it's clear who has the real skills in the kitchen. No offense, Amir, but this is quite a bit different from the meal we just had." Amir, embarrassed, looked at the ground. His heart sank. He had tried so hard to prove his worth, but it was clear now that his cleverness didn't make up for his lack of true skill in the kitchen. He had underestimated Nara, thinking she would choose someone like him over Leto. Leto, however, did not gloat. Instead, he simply looked at Amir with kindness. "It's not about being the best cook, Amir. It's about making something with love and sharing it with others. Nara and I are happy with what we have." Amir felt a wave of shame wash over him. He had been wrong. So wrong. It wasn't about being clever or having the best skills. It was about the heart, the love, and the connection between people. And Nara, he realized, already found that with Leto. After the event, Amir walked over to Leto, his head low in shame. The villagers were chatting and laughing, but Amir knew he had to speak to his friend. Leto, I'm sorry, Amir said, his voice quiet. I was wrong. I thought I could do better, but I see now that it's not about that. Nara loves you, and you're a good man. I was foolish to think otherwise. Leto smiled, his simple, forgiving nature shining through. Amir, it's all right. We all make mistakes, but what matters is that we learn from them. Amir felt a weight lift from his shoulders as he embraced his friend. The two men stood there, side by side, no longer weighed down by jealousy or misunderstanding. They had learned something important that day, not just about cooking, but about friendship, love, and loyalty. From that day on, the friendship between Leto and Amir grew even stronger. Leto and Nara continued to live happily, loved by their village for their kindness and the bond they shared. And Amir, though still clever and quick-witted, learned that there was more to life than just intelligence. Sometimes love and simplicity were the greatest treasures of all.